All right, so we're going to go ahead and start, and we're just going to go ahead and cut the box apart into sections. It's just a standard Amazon box, and if you cut on the section that's already compressed, like these folds here, it makes it way easier, and you don't have to worry about bending the cardboard. So just kind of do it however you can get it, where you don't bend the rest of the cardboard. You can cut off the side flaps too, but you really don't have to. So just select whatever piece you want to draw on. It doesn't matter, whatever size you want to make, I guess. And you're going to flip it over so that all the writing and the little paper packaging tape is on the back. You can just draw right over the top of that. I wouldn't bother peeling it off because it'll just rip the cardboard. So you're going to start with kind of like a half moon, half oval circle like that. And then you're going to draw a rectangle off of that for the body, for like its backbone. And then you're going to draw some kind of triangle or a fin or something like that you want it as the end. You can make it as big as you'd like, as big as the section goes. Just don't go onto the folded section. So then you're going to go ahead and cut that out. It's easier sometimes if you remove the end flaps, but it's entirely up to you how you want to do it. You just don't want to bend the cardboard too much, otherwise the fish won't have any stability. When you go to actually do anything with it, it'll just bend and kind of wobble. So you can just cut anywhere on there. You don't have to follow your line exactly. If you need to make a little adjustments as you go, that's totally fine. And don't worry about that paper stuff. You won't see it. It's all on the back, so I wouldn't even bother pulling it off. When you're cutting around the head here, you just kind of want to cut sections off, and don't cut all the way through. Obviously, you want to leave the backbone intact, so don't cut that little line right in the center there. You're just going to cut around the outside. After you have your section complete, you're going to look for a piece that's kind of nice and flat, and this is what you're going to use to cut the backbone pieces. I'm just going to use one of the flaps that's not torn or bent already or cut. And I'm just going to cut wonky shapes. So they don't have to be completely straight across. You can certainly make them that way if you want. But mine kind of are just little trapezoids. They're going to be skinny at one end and longer at the other. You want to kind of make it look a little rough because it's meant to be something that looks worn and kind of out of shape, I guess. So now we're going to use the hot glue gun. You can use any glue that you have. My glue gun doesn't quite reach all the way over to the center of my screen here, so I have to kind of do it off on the side. But if you don't have hot glue, that's fine. You can use whatever glue. It just might take a little bit longer to dry. Just make sure it's something that's strong enough to hold it in place. If you're going to hang them on the wall or whatever you're going to do with them, you don't want it to be falling apart really quick. So hot glue I think works best, but you can do whatever you'd like with that. You just put a little dot on the spine, and when you put them on there, you don't want them to be straight. Ooh, shoot. Can't use that one. Find another one. So you want them to be sort of maybe the same height, I guess, so you can kind of have something to work with later. But you don't need to have them be completely straight up and down. They can be kind of wonky. They can be a little bit raised on one side or whatever you want to do. So they don't need to be completely straight across. See how there's kind of a gap between that one? And when you put them on there, you do want to think maybe about trying to get an odd number. It's a little bit more visually pleasing to have an odd number than an even number. So maybe try for 5 or 7 or something like that. So I think that looks good. Just got to pull off all of the little hot glue hairs or whatever you call them, little strings and strips. Because when you are going to paint this later, and if you don't peel those off, then it's going to get stuck under your paint and it will eventually come off, and then you'll have like kind of a naked section. So you want to make sure you pull all of those off, as many as you can find anyway, at least on the front. Okay, so now we're going to shape the ribs, and I always like to start kind of along the edge. I line my scissor up with the edge of the head, and I just cut the very first one to be in line with that. It kind of gives the brain, it tricks the brain into believing that it's all part of the same shape. And then the other ones after that, I just cut in random lengths and heights, and then towards the tail, you want to come back down a little bit. They don't have to all be exactly the same length. They don't need to be in a perfect arch. You can do yours way more wonky than that. You can leave them straight, whatever you want to do. It just might not leave them quite as they are like that. And then repeat the same thing on the other side. That one actually looks pretty good. I'll leave that one alone. All right, so there's the shape of your fish. Let me get these out of the way. I think it looks kind of cute. So now I'm going to find an eye from the pieces that I cut off. You just want to find something that you think looks good with your fish. It doesn't have to be little. It can be whatever you want. And if you want to paint your own eye on, you certainly can do that too. But I like that one, so we'll go ahead and use that. I'm going to repeat the exact same process doing some other fish. I'm just going to cut the flap off of these, this longer piece here, and I'm going to make 2 longer fish out of that. You want to save all the extra pieces until you're done with your project, just in case you need something. So again, you flip it over, and then I don't want my fish to be the same size, so I'm actually going to turn the cardboard, make sure that the black pieces are up, and I'm going to draw some long fish this way. When you're cutting with the longer sections of cardboard, sometimes it's hard to keep the pieces from bending. So when you're going up the spine like this, if you kind of fold the outside piece that you've already cut, it'll open the way for you. I mean, it's not going to stop it completely, but it'll give your hand some space so that it doesn't completely actually bend the fabric, bend the cardboard. So sometimes you just got to do what you can do. Sometimes cutting cardboard is just a little tricky by itself, so just do the best that you can. It's always easier to come in from the outside and go in. Versus trying to turn your scissors to cram it into a certain section. So like up here, if you cut along the side of the head and stop when you get to the first line, and then you're going to kind of cut a little triangle away from the line that you want to do, just a little snip like that, so you don't have to quite get in that corner. It's going to help you round that corner so you don't actually damage the cardboard. And at the very end, you come back and cut that little triangle piece off. So just... you kind of have to, when you get to the corners, if you don't want to go all the way through, just kind of rip them off. So just like that. And you're going to actually, I have to flip it over sometimes, but this one lines up right. So you can just go back and clip that little triangle off of there. And then you get a really nice point without ripping or damaging the cardboard. My space cleaned up here, and now we can actually go back and start hot gluing the little ribs onto the backbones. So again, it's the same process as before. You just want to try and get an odd number. So this kind of has a short backbone, so maybe using some skinnier pieces versus having all the thick ones would be better on this piece. So you can try to get maybe 5 on this one. after I clean up my spot here, I just want to go ahead and pick off all those little hairs again from the hot glue. Make sure that they're all off before I start painting. I'm going to go ahead and find some eyes before I get rid of all my little schnibbles. So I have that little one for the top one. I'm going to find some different ones. Again, you can use whatever size you think looks good. It doesn't have to be, a certain dimension or anything like that. Just whatever shape or size. I kind of like these wonky cut ones. Looks really rough and kind of neat. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get painting. You can use whatever palette you have. I just happen to have a plastic kids lunch plate. You can use whatever you have, the back of a cereal box, the wax coated back, anything you have is fine. The paints that I'm using are just regular craft acrylic paints. You can use whatever you have. Obviously, if you only have washable ones, that's fine. Some of these are a little bit empty, so I'm going to flip them over so the paint has time to come down, so I don't sit there and flip them all over later and try and struggle with that. And then just deciding which paints I want to use. Again, you can do it totally random. You can have as many colors as you want. I have 2 brushes here, a big fat flat tip one and a smaller one, so you can use whatever you want. And then, of course, some clean water. Get these guys out of the way because I'm just going to work on, obviously, one at a time. So cardboard is really, it's very porous, so it's going to absorb a lot of the paint and the water from the paint. It's going to dry really, really quickly. So you don't really need a lot of paint, but you do need, more than just a little pin drop or something like that. So, just put a little, I don't know, maybe a dime size on your plate or whatever you have. You can always put it back in the bottle if you have too much. So the way that I'm going to paint him, I'm going to make him look a little bit rough. You can do whatever you want. I'm going to kind of just, it's kind of like dry brushing, but not really, because I have a little bit more paint than what you would use for dry brushing. So I'm just going to randomly kind of rub it across. I don't have any rhyme or reason. I mean, I have a plan in my head, but I don't really have any rhyme or reason to how I'm painting. I'm just sort of really quickly applying it, making sure that it's not completely see-through in some sections, but not even, it's just bare cardboard in other sections. Again, you can do whatever look you'd like. And the only thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to paint the actual backbone itself, the straight piece that goes from the head to the tail. You want to leave that cardboard because it makes the rest of the colors pop off. You can do whatever you'd like though. So if you do want to color it black or something like that as part of your design, you certainly can. There's nothing wrong with that. So again, I know you can see the paint, but there's a lot, I don't know if you can tell in the video, but there's a lot of like see-through sections and just regular bare cardboard. So when you rinse your brush, all you have to do is make sure that when you pinch it, it doesn't have any color left on there, and then it's clean. You don't have to, jam your brush down at the base or anything like that. So I'm going to go on to actually I'm going to get both my other colors. I think I'll do this orange color. And then this navy one. Make sure you give your paints always a good shake. Even if they've only been sitting there for a day or two, sometimes the oil can separate pretty quickly depending on what color you're using. So just give them a good shake before you actually put them, on your thing. I'm going to do the exact same techniques with the rest of the colors. So it's just going to be really random. I'm going to try and make it look, I don't know, kind of worn off, like it's been there for a while. So it looks a little bit more rustic or vintage or weather worn versus having it be completely solid. And again, I do have a plan in my head for how I'm going to apply this. You don't have to have a plan. You can just wing it and do whatever you want with it. And if you don't like it, you can always just paint over it. So there's no harm in trying something different or something new or whatever you want. So again on the tail, when I paint this blue part of the tail, you can see I didn't paint the actual backbone part. I'm just painting the fin. I think it helps separate that you have colors versus it being, it kind of makes it look a little bit more like wood than cardboard. But again, you can do whatever you want. All right, I think that looks good. And then I'm going to add my accent color in between these two blues. All right, I'm going to add my yellow. It's kind of like a yellowy orange color. And sometimes the lighter colors like orange and yellow, red, even some reds can be very translucent. They just take a lot of coats to cover. It just happens to be the way the pigment is or the company itself. So this yellow is actually pretty see-through. But being that there's nothing behind it, I actually kind of like it. Looks like it blends with the blue, and it looks like both the blue on the top and the blue on the bottom. So I actually kind of like it. And if you don't like how see-through it is, you can always just go over it with another coat after it dries. But I actually kind of like it how it is. So I'm gonna just use the one coat that I have. And I am actually going over the top of the blue, both blues on top and the bottom. So it kind of pulled both of those when I painted them down a little bit further than I maybe wanted them, so that it would go completely underneath this orangey color. So again, you can do whatever you want. You can have a lot of fun with it. Make some really cool patterns, whatever you want to do. I kind of like that I have some thicker paint sections. It stands out a little bit more, so I'm going to go back and add a couple where it's more of a thicker paint, kind of like a dot or a little section on each of the things to give it a little bit more of a texture look. That looks good. And then I don't know if I want my eye to be, I think I want it to be a contrasting color. So I'm not going to use any of the three colors that I have. I'm actually going to get, here, let's try this purple. And make that completely different, so it's completely offset from the rest of the body. You can do whatever you want. You could leave it white, you can make it white, you could use Google Eyes if you have those. But I'm going to actually just make it out of the same material, the cardboard material, and just paint it kind of an accent color. You can have it completely blend in, so you could put yellow on top of that yellow. And the fact that it's 3D will help it stand off and kind of create a shadow around it, so you will be able to see it no matter what you do with it. There. I think that'll look cute. So I'm just going to set that there and hope I don't lose it. I'm going to go on to fish number 2. So this is the pointy guy. He's kind of like a little gar, whatever you have. A little bit more of a pointy head. But I actually have to trim my backbones. I didn't do that before. So I'm going to do that the same way that I did in the beginning of the video. Just want to get that off my wet paint there. And it's always okay to trim them a little bit longer than what you think you might want, because after you get them cut and you don't really like the shape, you can always go shorter. Obviously, you can't go back and make them longer, so maybe if you're not really sure how you want it to look, start a little bit shorter. I'm sorry, start a little bit longer, and then you can always make them shorter as you go along. All right, I think it looks good. Oops, I threw my eye away. Hold on. Nope. This one here. There. So I'm just going to do this one in an ombre effect. So I'm going to use 3 different colors, and I'm going to kind of blend them so it looks like they fade into each other. This isn't something that you have to do, but I'm going to show you the trick in case you ever wanted to learn. So I'm going to start with a lighter color. Usually with the ombre effects, you have obviously 2 colors or more. I'm just going to do 3 colors, and they're usually in the same family, but they don't have to be. They don't have to be. So you could do like a teal to a purple type of thing. You can certainly work with it that way. But I'm going to do a yellow, and I'm going to use that orange that I had on the first one, and then this really dark kind of a burnt orange for the back. So I'm going to start painting, whichever side you want from to, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to start on the left and work my way to the right. That way I don't get my hand in the paint as I go. So I'm going to start with my lightest color. If you want this to be the darkest section, that's fine, but I'm going to start with the lighter color first and put that, just the whole head is going to be the same color. I think I'm going to switch to the big brush because this is going to take a long time if I keep using that little one. So you can add a lot of texture with your brush itself. You don't have to worry about making something, with a lot of paint. So I'm going to kind of do this up and down, like vertical motion on here. You can kind of see it puts like a ridge in the paint. So once it dries, you will actually be able to see that as well. So you can do some little wonky pieces. You can do a little wiggle. If you want a little slash, you could do that. Whatever it is that you want to do. So the head and the first fin are both going to be yellow. And this will depend on how big your fish is. Like on the one above, it's a little bit shorter. So, you might not have this entire fin here be completely yellow, or whatever color you have first. Just like that. So then on the next fin, you're going to do it half and half. So you're going to do the yellow here on this side. And you want to use not a gob of paint, but you want to have a good amount of paint because you have to sort of blend them. And then you want to put the second color or the next color on the other side. And you're going to kind of work them together, kind of like you're using this piece as your mixing tray. It helps that once you put the colors down, if you kind of wipe some of the excess paint off of your brush or add a little bit more of the color that you need, it makes it a little bit easier to blend. But it's one of those things where you just have to do it, and once you get the feel for it, you'll know which technique works best for you. So it can tend to turn, depending on the pigments, it can turn a little bit more one color than the other. It doesn't blend always perfectly. So it looked a little bit too orange the whole way. So I'm going to add some yellow. And after it dries a little bit, I'm going to go back over actually and kind of get rid of a little bit of those yellow spots. So I'm going to wait till it dries because I don't want them to blend so much. I just want to take a little of the yellow off. So the next two fins are going to be completely orange, or the second color in my case. I'm going to use the same painting technique where I go up and down. So I get that same like pattern texture with the paint. And like the first fish, they aren't completely, they're a little bit see-through. They're not completely paint. It's not, the paint doesn't completely cover the cardboard. So there's a couple of little raw sections. Again, if you hate that or you want them to be completely solid, you certainly can just go ahead and paint them completely solid. But I kind of like that worn look. All right, so on this next fin, you're going to do the same thing. So it'll be my second color on one edge, and then it'll be the third color in the dark orange on the right side of this little fin, or rib, whatever you want to call it. And I just dip right in there and just kind of, I'm going to mix them anyway. But if it taints your paint, you don't want to maybe do that. Maybe pull a little bit of the color off on the side, and you can use that for your blending sections. But to me, it doesn't really matter. The colors are kind of similar, so again, it's just one of those things you'll get a feel for. And you don't want to have it so that the line, that's the trick with ombre, you don't want there to be like a line. So you don't want one color and then there to be a visible line. You kind of need it to blend right in the middle of where those two connect. There's not a lot of room on this little fin, so you may have to go back over when it's dry and just add a little bit more of each color on the very edge to give it that impression that it's going from something, as one saturated color, blending in the middle, and then going to the second saturated color. And then I'm going to do this whole fin, the back fin, in just that darker orange color. on the side here for the just a little bit of decoration on the tail. I think it looks a little too boring. I'm going to blend the third and second color to kind of make an in-between color. And I'm going to just kind of draw those little ridges that sometimes fish have on their fins. You can do whatever you want. You can leave it plain. You could ombre the tail into a fourth color or third color or whatever it is that you have. But I kind of just like this little detail to make it actually look, you know, fishy. So it has this little ridge in there. And I'm actually going to apply the same color to the face because I think now that I look at it, the face is a little plain too. I know it'll have an eye on it, but I'm just going to kind of draw these little, like, they're kind of the same stripes as what's on the tail, but they go straight across. And they kind of hit this first fin, so it looks like it continues on. And I'm going to draw maybe one more that kind of dies in where the eye will go, so it doesn't go all the way back. So I think he's kind of cute. I don't know if you can really tell that on the video, but I think he's cute. And then for the eye, I'm actually going to make it... I think I'm going to go with just the standard, the orange color for his tail, versus adding another color. I could do red or something like that, or white, or, you know, whatever. I think I'm just going to do the dark orange color. I'm just going to actually do one side of it, and then I'm actually going to ombre the eye too, I think. So I'll put the dark orange on maybe the front, and then I'll go into, maybe I'll do this, the second color here, and do the other half that way. So they kind of actually bleed together because I do still have the dark orange on the brush. So there's kind of this little stripe of the darker orange color that goes through this second color. I don't know if you can really tell that, but that looks kind of neat. So I think that'll work. And the paint does dry pretty quickly, but make sure you don't touch it for just a little while because it will, you know, obviously pull the paint off if your finger touches where it's almost dry. But not quite, it'll actually pull the paint off and then you'll have to somehow blend that back in. So do be careful until it is completely dry. And you can kind of tell if it's dry, it'll be a little bit shiny if it's still wet. It'll be matte finished if it's not. So I'm going to go ahead and do the trimming on this one too, because I forgot to do it before. And this one's a little bit longer fish, so my fins or my ribs aren't maybe really long, so I can't really get kind of a bulbous body. It's going to be more of a straighter type body on this one. Sorry, I kind of cut it off the video, but you can see what you can see what I mean. All right, so this one I'll do, let's see. Maybe I'll do this one in American flag type of thing or something like that. So I'll do red, white, and blue for this one. Actually, I think I have enough of the navy. I'll see how much I have. I can always add more to my plate if I need more later. And sometimes whites, they can be like the yellows and the oranges where they're pretty see-through. So it just depends on what type of white you have. If you need to do more than one coat, that'll be up to you. Oops, it's a little much there, but that's all right. So I think I'm going to start with the head. I'm going to make that the navy color because that's kind of like the flag going across. So that'll be my blue section. My kids wanted me to make this one a rainbow, but everything in our house is a rainbow, so I think I'll do something else. All right, and then I think I'm going to alternate the ribs. I'm going to do white and then red and then white and then red all the way down. And again, I'm just brushing one coat on here. It's not going to completely cover the cardboard, so you'll be able to see a little bit through there. It kind of looks like it's been worn or sanded down. It's hard to tell in the video, but it's not completely covered. And you do want to try not to get that rib there. So if you do, or the backbone, excuse me. I just accidentally got a little white on there, but it's just a little bit, so I don't think you'll be able to see it. But if you do accidentally if you do accidentally paint the backbone, if you find a brown that's kind of a similar color, you can just go ahead and paint over that. If it's not that big of a deal, like that little white dot there is not really noticeable, you could just leave it. And if you're painting these with your kids, remember that the acrylic paints are not washable. So if you're concerned about that, maybe use some washable paints instead. You can also do this with markers if you want to skip the paint entirely. If you're using, if you have little ones doing this project, you can certainly just use regular washable markers and they will get the exact same effect. Then they can do whatever they want to the fish. So that might be another option for you. Found a little piece of glue. See, and it gets stuck under your paint and then that wiggles around. So I'll pull that off there. And then I think I'll just keep going and do the tail, the red. I was gonna maybe do like another pattern or something on the back, but I actually think it'll look good like this. We're gonna do a pattern on the head. So I think I'll just do it standard red. You can add whatever detail you want on here. You can make it more faded, but being that it's an American flag, I probably shouldn't do that because you don't want to have a tattered flag. So I think I'll see how it looks, and if I don't like it, maybe I'll paint the whole thing. So we'll just try kind of using what's left on the brush and see if it looks good and kind of worn like that, but I can already tell I don't really like it. So I think I'm just gonna go back over and paint it a little bit more solid. Yeah, I don't like that. I'm just gonna add a little bit more paint and cover that up completely. Not completely, but mostly. All right, so I'm going to add a little detail to the head. By now, because it's cardboard, the paint actually should already be dry. If it's not, you may have to wait just a minute for it to actually dry. But I'm going to use a straw. It's just a standard straw, and then I'm going to get a toothpick as well. My toothpicks happen to have a round end on them. If you don't have one with a round end, you can use a push pin. You can use whatever you have. So I'm just going to dip the straw into the paint that I have. You can practice on a piece of cardboard to kind of see, if you have enough paint or how much paint you have to have. And then you can just practice that way before you actually put it on your fish. So I think I like how it looks. I'm just going to start kind of back by the white, because the white would come in by the white rib. The white would come off of there. And I'm just going to overlap my circles. You can do this however you want. You can make them completely individual. You can skip this step entirely. You can do dots. You can do whatever you want. But I'm going to kind of put some circles on the back side of his head, like where it dies into the white rib. It's kind of a fun technique. It's one of those things where you think out of the box of what you could paint with. You could certainly do something with your fingers if you don't want to use a brush. Or again, if you have little ones, you could paint this entire thing with your fingers. If you have some sort of finger paint, you can do that too. So it's kind of fun to get messy, but so I don't want the entire head to be with white circles. I'm just going to kind of do it on the back side and sort of have it where maybe some come out a little bit further than others, so it's not in a straight line. And they do go off the edge, so some of them do actually get cut off. But I think that looks pretty good. Maybe just add a couple more. And if you plan on using your straw again or for another treatment, you can actually just rinse your straw off so it doesn't get gunky and just wipe it off. Obviously, you're not going to keep the straw, but just so that in case you want to use it for another painting section, you can just go ahead and you know, rinse it off. So I'm going to use the toothpick now, the exact same technique. Just dip it in the paint. Again, you can practice it to see how big of a circle it makes. And I'm just going to dip this right inside of some of the whole circles. So it kind of adds a little, I don't know, a little extra body inside some of the circles. I'm not going to do them all, just some of them, to add a little pop. And you can put the same detail back on the fin or back on the tail fin if you'd like. But I kind of just like it on the head, kind of like the stars on the blue section. So I kind of like it like that. I'm going to add a little detail down this nose here with just some little dots here. And I'm just going to dip it once. And if you keep going, the paint kind of fades and it makes it look kind of like a shooting star where it's bright on the end where the star would be. And then it's a lot lighter as it trails back, like kind of on the tail. So it's kind of a neat look. And again, this is something you can just practice on a junk piece of cardboard before you actually put it on your fish. So I think that looks good. And again, if you're going to use your toothpick again, you just want to rinse it off or wipe it off with a wet section of your paper towel. And then you can use it for other sections of your project. So the eye, I think I'm just going to do it a red color. I just kind of want it to pop off. I don't want to add another color into it. So I'm just going to do the whole thing red. All right, so at this point you want to let everything dry. And when it's completely dry, then you want to hot glue. We'll finish hot gluing and we'll get the project finished. So everything on mine is dry. As you can see, I have cleaned up. It's magical. Wish actually cleanup actually happened that fast, but it never does. So then you want to just hot glue your eye wherever it is you want, or use whatever glue you have. And you can draw on this afterwards. Like you could use a Sharpie and you could add details to this with the black marker or whatever, whatever you want to do with it. You could add anything else afterwards as well, but you want to make sure that it's completely dry before you finish gluing everything. And again, pull those little strings off your hot glue. So there we have our little fishies. Again, I got a little hair here. Hold on. All right, so after you have your fish completely done here, and they're dry and assembled, you want to seal it somehow, maybe with a Mod Podge. You can just use a really a thin coat of it. You could spray it if you want, but it should just be a thin layer. You don't want to do, maybe you don't have to even do the back, so it's up to you if you want to do that option or not. I hope you enjoyed this project today, and check back again next week for another art video. Have a great day!